What's up, everybody? This is episode 97 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to everybody that's been supporting us thus far. For those who haven't seen any of our episodes, go check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. But before we start, shout outs to our good friends, the Player Circle. They're a brand new app that's changing the game as far as basketball is concerned. If you want highlights or pictures of your activities, basketball players, join the Player Circle. It's on the App Store. Go check it out. But without further ado, we have a very special guest tonight. He hails from Montclair, New Jersey. He is one of the biggest influencers in the tri-state area and in the Northeast. You've definitely seen his videos. You've seen his T-shirts. Tonight, we have Mr. Justinn Delaney, the founder of the brand NJ Hoop Recruit. Just thank you for coming on to share your testimony.
Absolutely, Dave. I appreciate you. Appreciate you having me on, and those are some very kind words from you. I appreciate that.
Indeed. So let's start. So when did basketball start for you?
My earliest. Let me see. My earliest basketball memory. It's funny. I was actually telling the story yesterday, but it was around the time Michael Jordan was transitioning out. I didn't get to watch much Michael Jordan when I was a kid. He was, very much prevalent, but I wasn't really in tune with the game. But I specifically remember the last shot on Byron Russell, and maybe a year removed from that shot, the street that I was growing up on, a couple of my neighbors, they began to get basketball hoops, and the game just became a bit more prevalent in my life. And ultimately, it was the Allen Iverson crossover. That was probably one of the triggering moments that brought me to the game. I didn't know much about basketball, much about Allen Iverson. I just knew that it was something that everybody was talking about. And for whatever reason, I was just I was almost obsessed with Allen Iverson. And that's kind of where the journey started. I had an opportunity to play, some learn and play when I was in the elementary level. And so on and so forth. But that's ultimately where the basketball journey started, on Lincoln Street in Montclair, New Jersey. And more specifically, just growing and admiring Allen Iverson as he was ascending to his popularity.
So talk about growing up in Montclair, New Jersey, and what's the basketball culture like over there?
Well, growing up in Montclair, it was a lot different when I was growing up than it is now, in a sense that I actually lived halfway between two parks growing up, where there was almost always, some games going on. One being Glenfield, coincidentally, which is where Jim Sammons, and shouts to Montclair Immaculate. Coincidentally, that's where Jim Sammons held his fall league, as well as the Victor Cruz basketball weekend. And then the other park that I would go to frequently was Nishawayne Park. It's a pretty popular park amongst people, obviously, in Montclair who live in the South End area. That's the neighborhood that's neighboring the Oranges, more specifically East Orange and West Orange. So I played more basketball at Nishawayne growing up, but Glenfield was definitely a staple in the community as well. There was actually a league called Project Oasis MCAP, and it was a basketball league that took place every summer. And part of the stipulation to play was that you had to attend this class during the day. So I never attended or played in MCAP, but they had some sort of a curriculum. And again, the understanding was if in order to play, you had to attend the class. So that was definitely a memory that stuck out. Just seeing MCAP summer after summer, kind of being the hot spot in Montclair. A lot of kids from the Oranges, really all over New Jersey. It was a really popular summer league. So that definitely was a staple with regards to Montclair basketball. And again, just growing up, being so close to both Nishawayne and Glenfield, basketball was kind of always in the forefront. So again, I had an opportunity to play, a little learning play when I was in the elementary level. Kind of drifted away from the game during my middle school years. My priorities weren't with sports per se. And then I want to say closer to the latter end of my 7th grade, going into 8th grade and 9th grade. That's really where I began to fall in love with the game again. And shouts to my mom. She actually had got me a membership at the Montclair YMCA at the end of my freshman year of high school, because I remember my brother going there, my middle brother, Jordan, he was going there a lot on Friday nights. They had a teen night. And, between hearing him going there and getting the membership at the end of my freshman year, that's really where I began to fall in love with the game. But those are, I'd say the Montclair Y, Nishuane, Glenfield, those were, I'd say those were probably the biggest staples with respects to Montclair basketball and, my experience.
And then also Montclair also has kind of like a footnote in hip hop history, the Wellmont Theater.
Yeah.
A lot of concerts have gone down over there. How many concerts did you go to in your lifetime at that theater?
At the Wellmont, I've probably been to a few. I actually have a dream of throwing a concert there. COVID permitting. It's at this rate, we're probably talking, 12 months down the road. But mark my words, and I'll definitely get you a ticket if and when I do that. But believe it or not, before the Wellmont was a music venue, it was actually a movie theater. A lot of people don't know that. And so growing up, that was one of the 2 or 3, probably 2 movie theaters that were closer to me. So my earliest memories of the Wellmont were more so seeing movies there as opposed to, music acts. But I want to say, again, around the time I was in middle school, and that was probably the early 2000s up until maybe 2010, 2011, or maybe 2008, 2009. There was like a 7 or 8 year span where there was like nothing going on. But I guess some developers came in, renovated the area, and now it's turned into, as you described, one of the more popular music venues in New Jersey, if not the tri-state.
Yeah. And also that's the town where Kyrie Irving caught wreck at Montclair Kimberly Academy.
Yes, sir.
Before St. Pat's.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't know, but Kyrie actually spent the first 2 years of his basketball career playing at Montclair Kimberly, which isn't, the high school is a little further away from me, but they have an elementary school that's right around the corner from where I grew up. And a lot of the kids that I grew up with, it was either you went to Montclair High or you went to Montclair Kimberly. So I had a lot of, friends, and I know a lot of people that went through that school system. But yeah, absolutely, Kyrie Irving. He was probably one of their more memorable alums.
Did you ever get to see him play at MKA when he was in high school?
No, it's funny. So I want to say Kyrie's 2 years at St. Pat's, was that 2009 and 2010 or 2010?
Yeah, that's about right, because he and I are the same age.
Yeah. So at that time, I was actually at a state. I was at Umass.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we won't get into Umass.
Still in love with the game, but 9 months out of the year, I was in Amherst, Massachusetts. So it's funny, I kept tabs on a lot of those guys. I had no idea. It wasn't until Kyrie was wrapping up at St. Pat's that I figured I learned that he had went to Montclair Kimberly. But no, those years when he was on the rise, I was actually finishing up my my college studies. And again, I was still very much in tune with the amateur circuit. That's, thinking back to like my sophomore, junior year of high school, that's something that I always kept tabs on. But no, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to see him. I didn't really have a chance to see him play in high school. I didn't actually really start engaging in the high school scene until, I want to say 2012, 2013. So, between the time that I graduated high school, which was in 2006, to 2012, I wasn't as in tune with, who was who. So there was a lot of guys I missed. Caught the tail end of Carl Towns, but again, much. There was a lot of talent I missed out in New Jersey. Again, I was, keeping tabs on some of the national talent, but quite honestly, I had no idea that New Jersey had that level of talent. And I didn't know what I know now in terms of the infrastructure and the culture.
Now, let's talk about your high school years. Did you go to Montclair High?
Yes, I went to Montclair High all 4 years. Believe it or not, I actually played football my freshman year. I thought my experience in middle school playing football during my lunch period, catching touchdowns, was like a foreshadow of my athletic career. But I made it 1 year on the football team, and it didn't take much longer after the winter freeze kicked in that I realized, one, football wasn't for me, and outside wasn't really for me that time of the year. But I played football my freshman year. Again, towards the latter end of my freshman year, that's really when I started, playing the game more actively. Over the course of my sophomore year, I'd say that's really when I, began to identify, who I was as a basketball player. And when I say a basketball player, I'm very much a rec guy. And I'll talk a little bit more about, that journey. But sophomore year, again, just, just kept playing at the Y. Again, I was at the Y 6-7 days out of the week, just, playing ball. That was my life, and it wasn't about playing competitive ball. It was just, that's what we did. We went to school, we went to the Y, we played ball for a couple of hours, and then, we did whatever. And that was the routine Sunday to Sunday. So I was in the Y just about every day. And I was actually known for like my jump shot back then more than anything else before I had my growth spurt. So I was a bit of a sniper back then. So again, played a lot my sophomore year. My junior year, I ended up trying out for the varsity team. Didn't get cut. And it's funny, I'll tell the story of probably why I got cut. Going between that sophomore to junior year, growing up in New Jersey, and at that time, clapping the backboard was like kind of a thing, whereas now kids might jelly, kids might dunk. When I was growing up, like your way of, really, attacking the rim was by, tapping. And so I remember the end of my freshman year was the first time I touched backboard. By sophomore year, I'm trying to do it every opportunity I have, in a basketball game, half the time missing it, but just trying to, exert my, my attack at the rim. But to fast forward at that tryout, it was funny. My guy, Gary Gaines, and we were playing some 5-on-5 in front of the head coach. And there was a play where him and I had trapped the point guard in the back court. We got the steal. He outlet the ball to me. Nobody was in the front court, just me, the basketball in the rim. And again, here I am. I had to show off. I had to show the world that I could tap. And the moment that my basketball career formally ended was when I tried to tap the backboard at that tryout. And, so many people were happy for me going up for the layup because, it was like, all right, Justinn's going to show that he can produce. And I just remember I clapped the backboard. I could have swore it went in. And then within like a millisecond, I just heard this reaction from everybody in the gym, like, oh my God. And I missed it. And that was probably the end of my formal high school career. The following spring/summer, I remember my mom took me out to downtown Newark to buy me some sneakers, and she also told me during that trip that that was the last pair of shoes she was going to buy me. And if anybody knows me, they know I have a lot of sneakers. So I chose my senior year rather than to keep working on basketball. I chose to get a job. But again, anybody that knows me, that grew up with me, that played ball with me, they know I was always around the game in some capacity. But yeah, that was like my high school Montclair experience.
Shout outs to the Montclair High School graduating class of 2006.
Yes, sir.
So what made you decide to go to Umass?
So it's funny. Well, kind of not funny, but you know, I didn't really have much direction or guidance like my senior year. Thank God for my oldest brother, Jeffrey. I remember he came home during my senior year for Christmas, and you know, we're all just having like a family meeting, and one thing leads to another. And he's like, "Yo, how many schools have you applied to?" And I just kind of looked up with this dumb look on my face, and like many, you know, high school seniors, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I didn't realize I should have already started applying for schools. So long story short, I put a few applications out there. I think there were 3 schools that I applied to: Rider, Seton Hall, and William Patterson. Rider was kind of my dream school. They were also the first school I heard back from. I got rejected by them. Seton Hall, I believe I got rejected by them as well. Only reason I wanted to go there was for their sport management program. And then William Patterson, they accepted me, but it was a conditional acceptance. So they pretty much brought me in initially as like a part-time student. I forget the name of this program, but essentially I had to prove for a semester that and this may be hard to believe for anybody that's applied or got into William Patterson or who's familiar with William Patterson, but pretty much for a semester, I had to prove that I was able to manage a college workload. And yeah, again, that was really the only school that I got into. So, you know, did the William Patterson thing for a year or two, for 2 years. And I remember the beginning of my sophomore year, and to this day, I like remember the moment, but I forget what triggered it. But I just remember a voice in the back of my head that said, you got to go D1. And I don't say that in the sense of you have to play D1. William Patterson, you know, it was a good experience. I met a lot of good people there, but there wasn't much to the school beyond the pool hall and classes. There really wasn't much of a campus life, wasn't much to do on the weekend. And I just wanted more. You know, I grew up in New Jersey. William Patterson was 20, 30 minutes from where I grew up. I was going home every weekend. I just felt like I was living in this box and I needed to expand. So fast forward, that sophomore year, I got really focused, got my grades together. You know, I was working, I was, you know, super disciplined. I had a routine. I would go to class, I'd go to work, and I would study. That was like literally all I did for 7, 8 months. And it was like arguably the best 7, 8 months of my life. Again, you know, I applied to a handful of schools, and I leveraged the commonapplication.com. And if there's any kids out there that are, you know, interested in transferring from one college to the next, or either looking for schools to apply to, I would highly encourage you to take advantage of the commonapplication.com. And that's another story for another day. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But long story short, I leveraged the commonapplication.com, applied to a handful of schools, got into the majority. I think I applied to Syracuse was, I think, the only school that didn't accept me. And that was kind of my dream. I got into Seton Hall that go round. I got into Drexel as well, who also had a sport management program at the time. And one of my buddies was out there at the school, and I got into UMass. And I think it was just, I forget what it was about UMass. Yeah, I forget what it was. I think it was the sport management and just the fact that they had the #1 program in the country at the time. And I just remember committing to UMass, like sight unseen. I hadn't visited the campus, didn't know much. I just knew that it was in a state and a city that I had never been to. And I was ready for a new experience. So again, you know, started at William Patterson, fast forward after a couple of years, transferred to UMass. And it was at UMass where, again, I took there was like kind of another chapter in my basketball journey where I was actually working as a student manager with the team. And that was the first year Coach Ford had left. I think he went to Oklahoma State, and Coach Kellogg, who's currently at LIU Brooklyn, he came in. And I just had a desire to stay close to the game. Again, I had aspirations of being a sport manager, doing sport management. And I thought by, being a part of the basketball program, it would give me an opportunity to kind of, get a leg up on the competition. yeah, did the student manager thing for a little bit, and yeah, that was kind of like again a part of the basketball chapter at Umass. But beyond that, I did a little bit of everything at Umass with basketball, from playing an intramural. I reffed intramural, played recreationally, obviously. But yeah, if anybody ever has a chance to go out there, like Massachusetts is probably one of my favorite states to play pickup basketball in. Some of the best pickup basketball IQ, some of the best basketball, some of the most unselfish basketball. And I said that, from my experience 2008 through 2011, but actually went there in 2000, at the end of 2019. I went there for a homecoming, and I think it was 8-9 years removed from when I graduated, and you would have thought I had left one day and came back, because again, the same brand of basketball was being played 8-9 years later. So yeah, that's ultimately how I got to UMass, and that was a part of the experience out there.
How was the campus life out there? Because I have another friend that went to I know a few people that went to UMass. One of them is a good friend of mine. His name is Manny Montclair. He's one of the hosts of Dribbling Dimes, and he always talks about UMass with pride.
Yeah, man.
I know one of the hot spots that both of you guys shared is Antonio's Pizza.
Yeah, home of the Friday hot cheese, the dollar slice, man. Yeah, absolutely. UMass, man. I mean, those are 3 years that I'll never forget. Probably probably my 3 favorite years of my life. To answer your question, the campus life was beautiful. 25,000 kids, but what also made it unique for me was the demographic. Like, my whole life I had heard, like, oh, as a Black male, you're a minority. But, everywhere I looked, especially in Montclair, there were Black people. We may not have been 90% of the people in town, but, there was always a Black person within reach. Whereas when I went to UMass, it was a bit of a culture shock, in a sense that there's 25,000 kids there, but of those 25,000, only 5% were Black. So if you can imagine, that size and scale, it was a bit of a culture shock for me. But to answer your question, the campus life, the campus is beautiful. The campus life was great, both on and off campus. I had a chance to do a little bit of everything, from living in Southwest, which is the more popular dorm area, to living off campus in an area of town that I wouldn't encourage people to live in, just because there wasn't much going on, to living on like the main party strip on Hobart Ave in Amherst, which was kind of where I wrapped up my experience at UMass. But to answer your question, it's amazing. And if you ever have an opportunity to go out there and catch a game or hang out for a weekend, I'm sure you would agree.
Shout outs to the UMass graduating class of 2011. So yeah, man. So let's fast forward to 4 years later, 2015. I'm sorry, 2014 to be exact.
Yeah,
how did
correct.
3 years later? How did NJ Hoop Recruit begin?
So around that time, I want to say 2012, 2013. One of my buddies, Christian Morty, he was formerly I believe, an associate or staff writer at Slam Magazine, and he had actually pitched the concept of a podcast to Slam, and him and I had worked on this podcast for a year or two. Interviewed everyone from Nate Archibald to Bobito Garcia. Had an opportunity to meet a lot of basketball personalities, through Slam, and there were a couple of events that ultimately triggered NJ Hoop Recruit. The first being when we interviewed Adam Shopcorn, who, before every interview, I would always, scour the internet for information to ask the person we were interviewing about their product or whatever we were interviewing them about. And I remember prepping for the Lenny Cook interview, I couldn't find any film. I think I could only find like one film of Lenny Cook, and I found that hard to believe. I'm like, wait, how is this guy who they're comparing to LeBron? How is there no film out there? So, that kind of stuck with me. I was like, like I think there may be a lane here, in terms of documenting, high school athletes. And following that interview, shouts to my guy, Miguel Rodriguez, Dykeman, also of the Players Circle, who you introduced at the beginning of the
shouts to
podcast.
Miguel.
Shouts to Miguel. Yeah, a lot of people don't know, but I think, around that same time, I had followed Miguel on Twitter. We exchanged a couple of DMs, and this is the time that Dykeman, I think this went off, and like Michael Beasley was there. There was just a lot going on at Dykeman. I think J.R. Smith had played that summer, and I remember he reached out to me. They were looking for some press, some coverage, and we interviewed him. And following the interview, he was like, yo, like, I really want you guys to come out to the park. I know you guys, you've heard about it, we talked about it, but I really need you to experience it. So, he invited me out. Coincidentally, the day that I go out, and you've probably seen a video on my Instagram, but coincidentally, it was the first time I saw Isaiah Briscoe play.
This was 2014, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember, no, I want to say this was 2013. I'm not sure, but it's on you. It's documented.
Actually, you know what? It was 2013 because that following the next summer he got hurt.
Yes,
he was walking around in the boot. So 2013.
Yeah, so 2013 was the first time I saw him, and I just remember just being like, almost blown away with how good this kid was. And just for some context, at the time, I was actually coaching at the middle school level, so I had an idea of how good certain kids were. I actually shared the story yesterday. That's initially when I met Nate Pierre-Louis. At the time, he was playing in the same middle school circuit that I was, and Nate Pierre was ultimately like my barometer of what the ultimate like middle school phenom was at the time. And from seeing Nate and then seeing Briscoe, again that Lenny Cook memory triggered in my head, and I told myself, I was like, I'm not going to let happen to Lenny Cook happen to this kid, Isaiah Briscoe. I think he's special. And I remember over the course of 2013, I just, kept tabs with him. I'd always Google his 5-10-second clips, layup here, layup there. Anybody that followed me from day one, they probably remember my strategy then. I would like literally just take individual clips, like 5-10 seconds, post it, and 5-10 people would like it, and I would just keep doing that. And I just followed Briscoe, his entire his whole senior year, but then ultimately he left, and there was a need for me to kind of recreate myself. And I remember the Big Strict Classic. That was really the weekend where things took off for me. Markelle Fultz, he was actually one of the first basketball players who had a following, who like retweeted me. And that was like one of my first viral moments at that Big Strict event that weekend. So between Markelle Fultz and Miles Powell, like I'm forever indebted to Miles Powell. He's done so much for me. I'll tell you, this story, but there's a lot of stuff I can't tell you.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Personal. But yeah, I remember Markelle Fultz and Miles Powell. They shared these little clips that I had, and I just kind of kept building it little by little. But that's how it started. And I just kind of kept building it, little by little, treated it like a minimum viable product. And fast forward, 7 years later, it's hard to believe, but we're still building.
Yeah. So let's talk about the impact that NJ Hoop Recruiters had for the kids in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, if you would have told me 6-7 years ago that this would be the end product, and I would have I would have T-shirts, and I'd have kids, around not only New Jersey, but around the world, screaming basketball needs New Jersey, and people all, around the country and around the world, really, my brand, I wouldn't have believed you. But in terms of like, the question was ultimately, was it the impact, or I'm sorry,
The
what was the
impact.
question?
Like
Yeah,
how?
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I'm saying the impact that you feel that the brand has had on kids in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, you can't talk about New Jersey basketball and not mention, NJ Hooper Crew. It's just synonymous. When you say New Jersey basketball, immediately you think NJ Hooper Crew. It's been amazing, and yeah, it's still pretty surreal for me. Just to kind of see kids herald me in the light that they do. I'd like to venture to believe that I'm a pretty humble person, and I try not to let too much gas my head up.
Mm-hmm.
Big on just giving and helping, and I really like how the platforms enabled me to do that. But yeah, it's hard to put into words, Dave. I mean, it's literally a dream come true for a journeyman like myself that's done like literally everything with the game, from again being a manager to reffing to playing to coaching to being a podcast co-host to playing recreationally. At the end of the day, I'm doing what I love, and I know it's cliche, but when you're doing what you love, it's really nothing. You're just kind of going through the motions, but it's been amazing. Again, if you would have told me this 6 or 7 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. But I really do enjoy the role that I have, and the voice and the platform that I have. Again, I didn't really plan for any of this. It kind of love it. It's a great opportunity to connect with people, entertain. And ultimately, I'd say the best part has, ultimately been, again, providing that platform to enable kids to pursue the game at the next level, whether it's, high school, college, NBA, just giving them a platform to get more exposure than they may have had in other capacities.
Now, how do you feel like talk about the impact that you've had outside of New Jersey? Because you always come to New York a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you have a following outside of the tri-state area.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, whenever I hit the road, every once in a while, depending on who I run into, I may meet somebody in Atlanta or Texas or whatever, but frequently I meet people that are familiar with my. I think it's kind of like that validation of the strength of the brand. But it's great. I could have gone a couple of different ways. I could have gone the cliche route where I'm just kind of going for the headliners, like whoever's hot at the time, like, all right, LaMelo Ball, Zion. I could have gone that route. And, if I continue to pursue that route, I'm sure, I may have more followers right now, but in terms of the strength of the brand, I think, by doing what I've done, it allows me to, I can go into any gym right now, and if people don't know me by face, once I mention in New Jersey,
Right.
I can say, I'm NJ Hooper Crew. Like I was at the Nike store yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and this one employee there, him and I talk pretty frequently, and one thing led to another. I was like, hey, like, I didn't ask, like, do you know who I am? But I'm like, oh, by the way, like, you may be familiar with what I do on the side, NJ Hooper Crew. And
I'm sure his eyes lit up.
inside and outside of New Jersey,
I'm
just
sure
to,
his eyes lit up when you. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Justin. Yeah, I'm sure his eyes lit up when you said, I'm NJ Hooper Crew. That's my thing."
yeah, yeah. Like he couldn't believe it. It was pretty funny, and I get
Yeah.
that reaction pretty often. But
Same
even in New
here.
York, yeah. But I mean, even in New York, it's been great, because NJ Hooper Crew wouldn't be. I wouldn't be where I am, or the brand wouldn't be as strong as it was without New York City. So that's absolutely been a staple of the brand, especially over the over the summer months. Again, anybody that frequents NJ Hoop Recruit, once June, July roll around, I'm gonna be at Dykeman or Rucker, 5-6 days a week. Obviously, I'm gonna try to support, my New Jersey people, but there's nothing like capturing New York City street ball during the summer. But I really enjoy it. I love how it's enabled me to meet new people and opened up doors that may not have been open before. And again, whenever I do go out of town and meet people outside of New Jersey and they're familiar with the brand, it's always encouraging, when they're familiar with it, and it kind of validates, that work that I've put in over the years.
Right. So, and this is something that I'm sure both of us have taken pride on, being independent as far as our brands, where it's like a lot of people make the mistake of going to they start getting a little bit of notoriety, and then for some reason they wind up joining like these major corporations, whose names I won't say.
Sure.
But they I don't want to say sell out, but they kind of like wind up.
I know where you're going. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But yeah, man, let's talk about that. How much do you pride on doing your own thing?
It's everything to me, Dave. Growing up in the household that I grew up in, and just my family, and my life in general, hard work has been everything. Like nothing's been handed to me. But hard work has been, it's been everything to me. Fortunately, I've had side gigs that have enabled me to continue to pursue the dream. And I haven't necessarily been strapped for cash, which, again, enables me to, continue to focus on my brand. But, I think branding and just distinguishing and separating myself as a separate entity has been everything. There's a million different directions I can go with that one, but being independent has been extremely important to me. Again, I feel like it helps me separate myself from a lot of people. Like you're like, hey, you might have the best mixes, but you're not a boss at the end of the day. You don't own your content. That ownership means a lot to me. And I compare it. It's funny, you and I were actually having this conversation a couple of days ago, but I compare it to stocks. And the beauty of the growth of a stock is like, hey, it may be worth $1 for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But, once you begin to, once that stock begins to grow, what was once worth $1.50 is now worth,
a lot more.
Yeah. So I've always looked at the long term. I'm again not looking for a quick return. I was telling the story yesterday. The first 4, 5, 6 years, I was in the red, and I didn't, really make any money. And that wasn't easy. And I know that discourages a lot of people, but it was a necessary pain and a necessary struggle that I felt that I had to go through just to continue to chase my dream and continue to build my brand. But branding is everything, especially when you look at it, through the capacity of a business. Ultimately, in my mind, when it comes to business, people get into business for one or two reasons. You get into entrepreneurial speaking. You start a business either to sell something or to sell the business. And I don't intend on selling NJ Hoop Recruit anytime soon, but I think just being independent and kind of doing things on my own have given me more flexibility, just it gives me that ability to make those executive decisions. And I think there's something to be said about answering to yourself and making your own decisions, and not it's not that it's not bad, but it's bad enough I got a boss at work. I don't need a boss, for my extracurriculars on top of that. So, being an individual and that's important to me.
Now, you already talked about New York City street ball. Talk about Jelly Day. That was probably one of your biggest highlights.
Yeah. So funny story
We
about
talk
that
now. We
jelly.
talking about the first two.
The Rucker or Dykeman?
Actually, you know what? The first three:
Okay.
Rucker, Dykeman, and Milbank.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Oof, where do I begin? I mean, so anybody that was familiar with the old management at Rucker, they knew that they had a reputation for misleading. And this isn't the current management at Rucker, but the old management at Rucker, they had a history of misleading the public. And the night of the first Jelly Day, um, there were supposed to be like a star-studded lineup of guys that were supposed to be at Rucker. I think like Trey Duvall, like anybody who was anybody was supposed to be there. And I just remember the park being packed that night, and there was like a underclassmen game first, and then the main event. Not much happened during the underclass event, but I remember during the main event, again, everybody's looking for Trey Duvall. They're looking for Michael Porter. They're looking for, all these guys who they said were going to be there, and none
They
of them
never showed
showed.
up. Yeah.
None of them showed. But the beauty in that is it was actually in my opinion, it was a coming out party for Jelly Day. That was like the validation moment that summer where I knew like these kids are special. Like these, not only are they special, but they're rock stars. And I remember that was actually my first viral moment. I think that was the first raw video of mine that did like over 100,000 views. I remember for the first 2 or 3 days after that, my phone would just like not stop buzzing. And I remember, Javon and Jordan, they had their back and forth. But really the cherry on the top, well, there was Javon's 360 jelly, which like literally shut down the park. Kids running all over the court. And that was the first time I had seen that. I'd never seen kids run all over the court like that. And I know it happens in New York from time to time, but seeing Javon and Jordan go back, that was gold. And then the cherry on top when Zay came 3/4 of the way through the game, laced his shoes up and had like 2 or 3 moments where like the entire crowd just like stormed the court after he made a couple of moves. So that was a really important night for my brand. I remember like that night, like not being able to sleep. There was like this high almost. I'd witnessed something that, it was so
groundbreaking,
foreshadowing. Yeah, it was groundbreaking, and the energy. It was the first viral moment, and anybody that's had a viral moment, they can probably relate to that experience. So that was the first Jelly Day. Subsequent to that, the Jelly fam really took off. Really branded themselves and established themselves as the entity they were. So fast forward a year later, obviously they did it at Dykeman. It was much more. Much more. Their brand was like 10 times what it was.
Like it was really up there.
Year. Yeah, and so funny story about that day. So that spring/summer was actually when I first started selling T-shirts, and I used to go to the Nike store in Soho to get the New Jersey Mentality T-shirts made. And that day, I had spent the majority of the day there, and in New York City, and my plan was to go back home at a decent hour and then go up to Dykeman and get there early, blase. Well, long story short, and if you've ever had to commute through the Holland Tunnel out of Soho during rush hour, you can relate. But I remember my plans totally got thrown off. And I think my camera was at home, so I had to go home. And so I got caught in traffic, which like totally delayed my arrival. So I was like literally like, I was like seconds away from like missing the game. And I remember on my way home to get my camera, Jordan Walker had hit me up. And originally the plan was for me to grab him at I think he was at Seton Hall. I think he had just graduated, so he was like at Seton Hall. The plan was for me to grab him at Seton Hall, and he was going to come with me to Dykeman, and whatever. I was going to let him do his thing. And so again, I'm in traffic. I'm like, Jordan, like, there's no way I'm going to make it to Seton Hall and home and to Dykeman. Like, I'm going to be late, and you're playing in the game, so you can't be late. So I actually ordered Jordan Walker an Uber from I'm pretty sure I ordered him an Uber from Seton Hall to Dykeman because I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if he wasn't there. So I got him the Uber. I managed to get my camera, got to Dykeman like literally with like 5 minutes to spare, but the park was already packed, right? So I get to the park, zoo. I've never seen Dykeman like that to this day. It was a zoo. I don't think Kenny or anybody at Dykeman really knew what they were getting into.
Right.
And I remember anybody that knew me during that time, they knew I always filmed in the crowd, and you could always find me at the 50-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
I always had the same seat. And I remember trying to get into Dykeman, and it was just a mob everywhere. Like there was a line.
Yo, I remember that day. I remember that day specifically. Like I think I pulled up like maybe 4 or 5 p.m. I don't know. I was just coming from home. I just gotten off the 12 bus from Fordham. So I walked down Nagel Avenue, and then I see this whole crowd of people. And I don't know what's going on that day. And all I remember is it was 10th Ave versus somebody else. That was the game. It was like
Northeast. 10th Ave.
Exactly. That's Northeast. That was that
and
day.
Northeast actually won. A lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Jordan shut the park down, but Northeast actually won the game.
Yeah. But yeah, that day was crazy. And I wish I had a camera for that. Matter of fact, the only thing I have from that day was probably like I waved my camera around like with the crowd, showing the crowd. That's the only thing that I have. I gotta look at my phone, but that's the only thing that I remember that I still have from that day. But yeah, man, I wish I had a camera around to document that day because it was so great. But I don't know if that would ever be duplicated at Dykeman again.
No,
as far as Jelly Day.
It was so organic. Something like that you can't plan. But to finish the story, the crazy part was, again, if you knew me, you know I always filmed at the 50-yard line, and so I couldn't even get into the bleacher section. So what I did is I climbed up the back part of the bleacher, and again the thing was packed. And I remember, all these kids looking at me like, "Yo, there's no room." And I took a $10 bill out my pocket. I was like, "Yo, here's $10. I need your seat." The kid gave me his seat. And to this day, that's probably, the film I captured that day is arguably the most iconic film that I have, and it's timeless. Every few months I throw the video back up, and it was timeless. It was organic. It was raw. It was unlike anything similar to that first Jelly Day experience. Again, I don't think I slept that night. I was so wired and just like in disbelief of what I had experienced. So that was huge. And then, to see them build on that at Millbank the following year, that was also huge. I'm sick. I actually missed the last play when Juju and Ramsey were going at it. But my guy actually hooked me up with the video. But that was that moment. That was when I knew this brand is like really, really, really strong. But those are probably my top 3. Granted they're all Jelly Days, but those are probably 3 of the most memorable moments. Yeah, for sure.
And then after, it's like the last 2 years, they wasn't able to have it for one reason, like 2019
crowd control.
That, and then the same thing last summer. That was bad. You know what I'm saying? But But then again, that's how you know that they've really, really gotten out there.
Yeah, absolutely. They're bigger than I think they're bigger than they even know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, once they all graduate from college, they can monetize. I'm sure they could definitely monetize off of that for sure, because they'll all have degrees by that time. And I'm proud of them because these kids have made it. You know what I'm saying? They had a lot of people doubting them in between, but they still progressing, man.
Yeah.
Shout outs to the Jelly fam. And then for everybody that don't know about this, the original Jelly Day was in 2016.
Correct.
Now let's talk about you filming EYBL. Like, what's it like? How, for those that may not have gotten access, because shout outs to Position Sports, but they're very tough when it comes to credentials. Like, talk about filming EYBL and Peach Jam, which is also one of your favorites. One of your best.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those were super, valuable parts of the journey. First couple of years, absolutely a dream come true. I'd always heard of the UIBL and, seen the videos, the pictures, heard the stories. But it was so encouraging to, get approved for all of those dates, including Peach Jam, because to your point, it's not easy. A lot of media outlets, apply and they get rejected. So, getting accepted and being able to film there, that was also, very validating in terms of like the strength of my brand. That told me I was doing something right. And it was also, good experience in terms of being able to, figure out who's who. Like, all right, I think this guy from New Jersey is the number one point guard in the country, but how does he measure up against, so or so? So, yeah, I enjoy EYBL. I hope it comes back this summer. Definitely one of my favorite things to do during the spring or the summer. And a must for any basketball journeyman. You have to, if not the EYBL, Peach Jam for certain is something that every basketball junkie has to experience for sure.
Yeah, and then Top 100, that was also good. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, the general public don't even get a chance to cover that.
Yeah,
because it's basically locked down to, they only limited to scouts and now college coaches and then family and friends. But that's a dope camp. Kind of reminds me of ABCD, but then again, they had more people in there. So
yeah, I think ABCD was open to the public to some capacity. I'm not sure. I actually missed that when it was in Jersey.
Yeah, they need to bring that back at some point. ABCD would be really dope. The only problem is, where would they have it? You know what I'm saying? Because the Division One, after, I want to say 2011, that really killed the chances of any events going down on these college campuses. Well, Division One college campuses for that matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, granted, Nike Elite 100, they get to have it at a Division One school, and Elite and the Top 100 camp, they're at a Division One school, a beautiful building, but even then, still, it's gonna be very tough.
Yeah.
But man, those were some great experiences.
Totally agree.
Now, let's talk about the whole COVID situation. Like, how tough has it been not being able to go out to to shoot?
Yeah, it's been tough, but it's also been like eye-opening in terms of how I can scale and leverage the brand. Obviously caused me to dig a little deeper into the crates and caused me to be a bit more creative. Obviously I miss the game, but it's enabled me to just capitalize on the branding, focus on the merch a little more, stay home. There was a good 4, 5, 6 years where, around the year, I didn't really have a chance to enjoy a lot of weekends during the spring or the summer. So it's been good actually being an adult and, doing what normal people do. But, I definitely miss the game. But it's also been a blessing in the sense that I've had a chance to really work on my branding and more importantly, continue to grow. Like I actually managed to eclipse the 100,000 follower mark in the midst of 100KJ. Yeah. No, but I mean, I think there's something to be said about, me crossing that threshold in the midst of the pandemic where, for several months, kids weren't allowed to play and I didn't film for, several months. So it was a blessing in disguise, in spite of, the circumstances.
How do you feel about, the New Jersey allowing the kids to play ball again? Like, I feel like that's a really good thing, because a lot of people have, they've been waiting on this, and you know what I'm saying? Like, give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, I'd say most importantly, I think it's good for the kids. I mean, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty, and I think there are definitely going to be some bumps in the road in terms of, figuring this thing out. If the NBA is any indication and what's happening there, what do you think is going to happen when, it gets scaled down to the high school level? Not to be a pessimist, but I think, we're not quite over the hurdle as of yet. I think there's still a lot to be learned. But I am happy to see that, we're taking progressive steps to attempt to have a season.
Yeah.
So I just hope that, programs, coaches, and the kids, continue to be prudent, smart, and, do the right thing so that they can ultimately finish the season. It sucks we're not going to have the TOC and the state playoffs, but again, it's about the kids. It's about them having that experience, having fun, and finishing what they weren't able to finish last season.
Luckily, Jersey's able to have that. PA is starting up again. Connecticut's starting up again. New York, unfortunately, we haven't had anything.
Yeah.
No news or nothing. OSL right now, today,
they're in Arizona, right?
Kentucky, I believe. Yeah, but Grind session. But right now, they're the only team in New York City that's actually playing anywhere. But for them, they have to go out the state. So
yeah, got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, man. So this is one of my favorite questions to ask before I lead up to the final question.
Sure.
So if you could go back in a time machine to 2006, what would you tell 18-year-old Justinn that's about to graduate from high school and has a love for basketball before he turns into Justinn NJ Hoop Recruit?
Yeah, quite honestly, Dave, I don't have any regrets. It's one of my favorite sayings. I've been saying it a lot lately, but the journey is the reward. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, they go through an experience with the expectation that at the end of the journey or at the end of the experience is this big bag of gold or money. But the reality is those experiences, those failures, those successes, those small victories, that's really the reward. Learning from your mistakes, learning from shortcomings. That's probably been the most valuable piece to me. Just reflecting and laughing at silly mistakes I may have made. So I don't have any regrets. But if I could do it all over again, the one thing I would tell a 17, 18-year-old Justinn is to just work hard. I actually, I didn't know what it meant to work hard. I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know how to study until I got to college. I didn't understand the significance of repetition and what that could do for you in any capacity, whether you're, shooting 100 jump shots a day or, repeating, trying to memorize something, saying it, reading it 100 times over and over. I would tell young Justinn, be patient, work hard. And I would really just impress upon him the importance of, trusting the process and working hard. I was under the impression that, certain things, would be God-given. And, I was under the impression that, my favorite basketball players just woke up, came out the womb, and, they were great. And it wasn't until, I was in my mid-20s that I realized, Kevin Durant, he's not just good by chance. He puts a lot of hours in. He puts a lot of reps in. So if I could tell myself anything, and if I could tell, any kid out there who's listening, or anybody, who's working towards something, there's no shortcut to success. And as simple as it sounds, work hard.
Well said. Final question. What's next in the future for Justinn Delaney and New Jersey Hoop Recruit?
There's a lot. Again, the brand continues to grow by the day. I think you can definitely keep an eye out for, without, letting the cat out the bag too much, just, branches of the brand, just really looking to capitalize on it, leverage my following and the audience in ways that I haven't before, and connecting with the youth and parents in ways that I haven't before. So that's one thing you can expect in the future. And also just more storytelling. I'd like to take steps towards creating like a documentary or a short movie, still have highlights and things of that nature, but, tell the story, tell someone's story, show the steps in someone's journey. That's something on my short list for sure that I think folks can expect to see from me in the near future.
Just thank you for coming on to share your story, and I wish you and NJ Hoop Recruit nothing but the best moving forward.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Dave. Best of luck to you, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay blessed, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys, this is episode 97 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to my guy, Justinn Delaney, for coming on to share a story. For those of you from Montclair, New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, the tri-state area, and fans of NJ Hoop Recruit itself, go check out this interview on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. Stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.
Jersey up. Holla.